So I started a new job about 2 years ago, and I finally found a job that I'm naturally good at, which has been amazing because my performance has been top-notch. I've had no disciplinary actions, and I've even gotten a few awards. So I started helping out my fellow coworkers when they were struggling, and especially helping out the newbies who just got off training. Our training is garbage generic training for 3 weeks, which has literally nothing to do with our sector. And we're literally told to forget everything we learned because it just doesn't apply to us. So, naturally, our newbies struggle a lot at the start, and that tanks the performance for the entire team. So, I wanted to be a good team player now that I finally felt like I knew what I was doing, but apparently that was a mistake on my part. After 3 months of helping my team, I was called into a meeting with our coach to discuss my behavior. I was told that I wasn't allowed to help my coworkers because I'm not trained in that field, and only the higher-ups are supposed to answer questions and make decisions within our job. And that would be fine and understandable if the coach was available for the entire 8-hour shift to answer questions and help people, which they aren't. I pointed this out along with some statistics that since I started helping out, our performance has gone up each month. And it helps the newbies feel welcome because they have a non-superior coworker they can ask questions to without needing to worry about it. This was another mistake on my part. Our coach got really angry, and I was basically told that this is how it is, and if I'm caught giving unsanctioned help again, I'll receive disciplinary action. Okay, fine. Have it your way, you sad, pathetic excuse of a human. I screenshotted the conversation, dug up performance reports prior to me helping, during me helping, and for the next 3 months without me helping. And wow, shocker, we started tanking in our performance. How could this have happened? So the entire team got called into a big meeting with the higher-ups, our manager and our coach to discuss what the hell is going on and why we're doing so awful. I let everyone speak their piece, and at the end of the meeting, I just asked if I could have 5 minutes of one of the big chief's time, because I think I might just have a solution to help improve our performance. He was actually surprisingly interested, so he called me up after the meeting to hear me out. I told him about the whole situation, showed screenshots, performance results, the whole 9 yards. This dude was visibly shook, a bit lost for words to be honest, but he said that he really appreciated the input and he would look into fixing this internally, and that was that. 3 days later, our coach resigned to search for greener pastures. F you. OP, you committed the cardinal sin, which is making your boss look bad by doing their job better than they could. OP went on to clarify in an edit that, of course, she didn't get a pay raise. And that's just so incredibly stupid, because if you have a worker who's clearly, objectively improving the performance of your team, why would you not hire that person into doing the job that they're doing better than their manager was? Isn't that just a stupidly obvious, clear answer? But nope, corporate BS is always gonna be corporate BS. And speaking of stupid corporate BS, we have this post from Raptor Blues down below. It's amazing how clueless management can be. I worked a field job where we had to call an 800 number after on-site service so we could log our time. Our company started cutting back on the people that we would call in that call center to save money. Those attempts to save money ended up costing the company a massive amount of money because they had 300 workers in the field just sitting on hold for hours at a time waiting to log their service calls. I work for an embroidery company that embroiders logos onto uniform shirts. There's this one particular shirt that we get all the time that has a diagonal closure. So the left side of the chest is essentially covered by a huge flap coming from the right side. There is such little room on the left side that any logo bigger than an inch looks like it's gonna go into the person's armpit. After a few complaints, we made a policy to only allow that shirt to put logos on the right side. A big company we work with likes to make massive orders with generalized embroidery placement. Whenever I would see this particular shirt was in the mix, I would reach out to them to let them know that we had to switch the logo to the right side. One difficult manager from that company reached out to the client with my suggestion and got an earful because the client insisted their logo could only be placed on the left due to company policy. Instead of smoothing it over with her client, the rep took it out on me. She sent me a very aggressive email stating that we were perfectly capable of embroidering the shirt on the left side because we had done it in the past, and to stop blowing up her inbox with suggestions for a better embroidery location. From now on, whatever embroidery location the order requests was final. I saved the email, and I got my boss's blessing to immediately stop all quality control emails for this company, per the manager's request. One day, a huge order comes in, all diagonal closure shirts, all left side embroidery. I maliciously complied and sent the order on its way with no hassle to that manager. A week later, an executive from that company emails me, horrified. He forwarded me photos of the client's shirts, all with the logos in the armpits. He said they had to refund the client over $10,000 and that the client was in an uproar, and he never wanted to order shirts from them again. He asked me, why didn't we tell them that this was a bad location for the embroidery? I didn't say a word. I simply forwarded the email the manager sent me, telling me verbatim that I was to no longer waste the company's time making useless suggestions for those shirts. Our next Reddit post is from Throw08No. This took place about 15 years ago and involved Wells Fargo. There are some important parts that come into play. 1. My spouse and I were young and dumb financially. We both had bounced a few checks on our own checking accounts. They were closed a few years prior. Wells Fargo offered a way to rehab your checking account history. They offered you the opportunity to pay them an additional $10 a month to have the right to have a checking account. They restricted the release of funds and made life difficult to even have a checking account. But if you played by their rules, you could graduate to a traditional checking account after a year. 3. I participated in the opportunity checking. I participated in this program and graduated my account. My spouse had lived without a checking account for a few years and wanted to try again. 4. I took my spouse to Wells Fargo. We explicitly explained my spouse's previous history and specifically asked for their awful checking rebuilding accounts. We knew that my spouse had to start at the bottom. 5. The branch manager entered the basic information and said there was no need for the rehab checking account. My spouse qualified for the regular account. We asked again to be absolutely sure. Yes, no rehab needed. Here's some starter checks. Your ATM card will be in the mail in a week. They gladly took an initial cash deposit of $500. Fast forward a week. We get the ATM card and we call to activate it. Your account has been closed. Why? We determined that you've had bad checking history previously. We go round and round about how we covered this, disclose it up front, and we ask for the checking rehab account. You'll have to go back and open that account if you want it. We can't change the account. So they're closing the account because we have to have the rehab checking account, the one that we specifically asked for and they refused. Facepalm. My spouse didn't know what to say, so we got on speakerphone. I started asking questions. I asked, so will you pay the outstanding checks and refund the rest? No, we won't pay any checks. You'll be charged for return checks from your merchants. Since then, my spouse had written 3 checks totaling less than $100. Very few places accepted starter checks. I said, but we have the funds in the closed accounts to pay them. What's the issue? We don't do that. At this point, the person on the phone became flustered. Nobody seems to ever have the funds or the audacity to demand them to pay checks written in good faith. They had no answers on why they refused that checking account, which we should have had in the first place. They didn't think that they had a responsibility to notify us that the account was closed. And how dare we challenge their policy? They didn't like how I kept pointing out that there wasn't a single thing that we did wrong, but they think that they're not responsible for return check fees. So the person on the phone decided to just not talk to me any longer. They hung up and we called back. The same thing happened. Finally, they offered this gem. We won't talk to anyone except the name on the account. Click. Their only possible chance to avoid a difficult discussion where they own their mistakes was clinging to not letting someone else ask questions with the account holder's permission. They even refused to let me tell my spouse what to ask and respond to my spouse directly. You can only talk to the name on the account? Okay, so I called back. Miraculously, in 60 seconds, I now identified as a different person. Thanks for calling Wells Fargo. May I have your name? I gave my spouse's name. Then there was a long pause. You aren't spouse's name. Sure I am. Ask me anything. Name, social security number, address, mother's maiden name, date of birth. I gave all the information, and then there was another long pause. No, you're not the spouse. Why do you say that? Because you're a man. Wait a minute. That's why you closed my account? Because I'm a man? I'm pretty sure that's illegal. Please hold. A manager finally comes on. We have a little back and forth about who I identify as. But seeing how I'm not doing anything except demanding they pay checks on my spouse's account, written by my spouse, with funds in their possession, there isn't much they can fight. But they finally agree to pay the 3 checks from the funds in the account. They didn't want to, but the name on the account demanded it. And the fallout? They had to do the right thing after wasting hours fighting it. Down in the comments, we have this story from Blythe. When my mom died, we were trying to close accounts and switch names on the account. It was for things like paying off mortgages and changing the utilities, things that had to be done pretty soon after she passed away. I was told repeatedly that they would only speak to the account holder. I understood they were just following their training, but come on, she was dead. How was I supposed to get in touch with her? I told one person they would need a medium or a Ouija board to speak to her, and if they did make contact, to have her call me because I wanted to speak to her too. Then Ars Torak replies, when my grandmother passed, my grandfather took her urn with him to the various banks and whatnot. He placed it on people's desks so they could speak to her directly. It made the whole process a lot quicker.